How close are we to the end? How long is biblical last days? Imagine you stumble upon an ancient treasure map. The markings are cryptic, but you know one thing. It leads to something of immense value. You spend days, weeks, maybe years studying it, trying to decipher every symbol, every clue. Some trails lead to dead ends. Some take you in circles. But then, one clue leads to another, and another, until, finally, you stand at the threshold of discovery. Now what if I told you that the Bible is like that treasure map? It doesn't just encourage us to search, it guarantees answers. Proverbs 2:4-5, Matthew 7:7. It even claims to contain everything we need to understand God's purpose and what is expected of us. 2 Timothy 3:16. One of the biggest mysteries people try to solve is this. How long will the last days last? Have we been miscalculating? Have we misunderstood a key clue? Are we near the end? Or is there more time than we think? Let's dig in. The first clue, Jesus' own words. Over 2,000 years ago, Jesus' disciples asked him a question that still echoes today. When will these things be, and what will be the sign of your presence and of the conclusion of the system of things? Matthew 24:3. Jesus didn't leave them in the dark. Instead, he gave a striking parallel. For just as the days of Noah were, so the presence of the Son of Man will be. Matthew 24:37. This wasn't just a vague analogy. Jesus was giving us a direct link between Noah's time and our own. But what do we know about the days of Noah? Genesis 6:1-7 paints a chilling picture. It speaks of a time when spirit beings, described as sons of God, left their heavenly place and came to earth. What followed was a period of terrible corruption. Not just physical violence, but moral, mental, and even genetic corruption. The world became so wicked, so twisted, that Jehovah declared, accordingly, his days will amount to 120 years. Genesis 6:3. A countdown had begun. Despite people living for centuries at that time, Jehovah set a limit, 120 years, before he wiped that world away. And now Jesus tells us the last days of this system will mirror the days of Noah. Ponder over this. If God, despite their long lifespan, assigned them a last days period of 120 years, would he now assign more to us? But is there more to this connection? The second clue, the length of a biblical generation. Jesus didn't just compare our time to Noah's. He also said something else that many overlook. Truly I say to you that this generation will by no means pass away until all these things happen. Matthew 24:34-35. But how long is a biblical generation? The answer may be hidden in the days of Abraham. When Jehovah made a promise to Abraham about his descendants inheriting the land of Canaan, he also gave a specific timeline. Your offspring will be foreigners in a land not theirs, and that the people there will enslave them and afflict them for 400 years, but they will return here in the 4th generation. Genesis 15:13-16. Here's where it gets fascinating. The Israelites didn't just stay in Egypt for 400 years. The Bible records that they dwelled in Egypt for 430 years before their exodus. Exodus 12:40 and 41. Then, after escaping, they wandered the wilderness for another 40 years due to their rebellion. 430 years plus 40 years equals 470 years. Yet, Jehovah still calls this period 4 generations. Now, 470 years divided by 4 generations gives us approximately 120 years per generation. Isn't that remarkable? But there's more. The third clue. The pattern of 120 years. This 120-year pattern appears again with Moses. Moses died at 120 years old, just as Israel was about to enter the Promised Land. Deuteronomy 34:7. But there's something eerie about his birth. Exactly 120 years earlier, Pharaoh attempted to kill all Hebrew baby boys, fearing a deliverer was among them. Exodus 1:16. Why 120 years before Israel's entrance into Canaan? Could it be that Satan himself knew the significance of a 120-year cycle? That from the moment Moses was born, he suspected a divine countdown had started. Perhaps even that a Messiah figure had emerged. Evidence suggests he did. In the book of Revelations 12:12, the Apostle John, foretelling events unfolding during the Lord's day, from 1914 onward, describes Satan being hurled down to the earth, where he becomes wrathful because he knows he has a short period of time. This means Satan is fully aware that the clock has started ticking on his system. Based on the information available to him, the range of the last days, he calculates that it's a brief window, even though he doesn't know the exact day or hour, as Jesus Christ clearly stated. What's more telling is this. A closer look suggests that the world's political, religious, scientific, and economic elites also seem to have a clue about the approaching end. They don't always speak openly about it, but their actions speak volumes. Political leaders. While most world leaders don't publicly declare that the end is near, their behind-the-scenes efforts suggest otherwise. From constructing underground bunkers and exploring off-world colonization, to pouring funds into climate resilience, global surveillance, and AI governance, it's clear they're preparing for more than just political instability. They're bracing for systemic collapse. Closed-door meetings, elite forums, and strategic reset discussions quietly reflect a survival-oriented mindset. This isn't just about shaping the future, it's about surviving it. While they rarely say the end is near, the collective urgency, secrecy, and intensity behind their actions strongly suggest that the world's political elites are aware that humanity stands on the edge of an irreversible tipping point, and they're taking steps to shield themselves from what may be coming. Religious leaders. Many prominent religious leaders, especially those tied to long-standing institutions, have long been familiar with apocalyptic prophecy. The Catholic Church, for instance, has archived centuries' worth of end-time predictions, including the Fatima secrets and the prophecy of the popes, which chillingly hints that the current pope might be the last before divine judgment. Islamic scholars trace signs of the hour as corruption, conflict, and disaster escalate. In Judaism, there is increasing focus on messianic expectation and preparations linked to the Temple Mount. But beneath their public calls for peace and prayer, some elite religious circles may be preparing in more discreet ways, holding confidential theological summits, relocating sacred artifacts, preserving holy texts in secured vaults, and aligning themselves more closely with global political movements like the United Nations. While they rarely say it openly, many religious leaders act as though they believe something climactic may be coming. Scientific community. A deepening sense of unease has entered the global consciousness, driven by the scientific community's warnings. From climate collapse and weakening magnetic fields, to pandemics, nuclear risks, and potential asteroid threats, science now echoes the very themes once reserved for prophecy. And though scientists offer solutions and governments push policy, the underlying tone feels urgent, sometimes desperate. It's no longer just theory, it's anxiety woven into films, books, headlines, and dinner table conversations. Somehow, the expectation of an impending end now lingers in society's subconscious, much like it did just before the Messiah appeared in the 1st century CE, Luke 3:15. History repeats itself. If a biblical generation is 120 years, does that mean we have 120 years from 1914 to the end? We can't say for sure, because just like a treasure map, some clues lead to dead ends, some lead to more searching, and some unlock the final treasure. Even Jesus himself cautioned, "Concerning that day and hour nobody knows, neither the angels of the heavens nor the Son, but only the Father." Matthew 24:36. But he did give us this certainty. When you see all these things, know that he is near at the doors. Matthew 24:33. And this generation will by no means pass away until all these things happen. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Matthew 24:34 and 35. Come to think of it. Are we not witnessing all these things he mentioned above? Proliferation of false Christian organizations, the wars and reports of wars, food shortages, natural disasters, pestilences, and the intensive global campaign about the incoming God's kingdom or government happening before us. Matthew 24:4-14, Luke 21:8-11. So should we not trust that he is near at the door, and that this generation will not pass away before the end? So are we in the final years of the last days? Let's be honest, many people have tried to calculate the exact time of the end, and many have been wrong. But what if we are truly in the last years of the last days? Look at the world around you. The love of the greater number has grown cold. Matthew 24:12. Moral corruption and unnatural desires are celebrated. 2 Timothy 3:1-5. People are ridiculing the idea that an end is coming. 2 Peter 3:3 and 4. And yet every single sign Jesus gave is happening within this generation. So the question isn't if the end will come. It's what will you do about it? What will you do with this knowledge? Will you ignore it, like those in Noah's time, who laughed until the floodwaters swept them away? Will you dismiss it as just another theory? Or will you trust the Bible as God's Word? Will you exercise faith in Jesus' warnings? Do you want to know more? In my next video, we'll explore future events leading up to the end and what you need to do to survive. If you want to be ready, don't miss it. In summary, the Bible is a treasure map filled with clues about the last days. Jesus compared our time to Noah's, where wickedness reached a peak before God intervened. In Noah's day, the countdown was 120 years, a pattern that reappears throughout the Bible. A biblical generation also appears to be 120 years. Does this mean we have 120 years from 1914 to the end? We can't say for sure. But one thing is certain, we are in the last years of the last days. And this last days generation will by no means pass away before the end. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? In my next video, we'll uncover future events leading to the end, and what you need to do to survive. Stay tuned.